Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the Linux operating system. As I promised in our last session of the semester, I am going to present to you some of the basics from the Linux operating system, basically Ubuntu. We'll go through the installation process, we'll go through some of the file system management, user accounts, and some of the basics you need to get familiarized if you want to play with this operating system. We are going to be using a VirtualBox to be able to create a Linux installation. You are familiar with this application, you've used it in class, and I'm going to go step by step on what needs to be configured in order to support a Linux virtual machine. So let's go ahead and create a new virtual machine. We're going to call it Ubuntu 2, since I already have one. It's going to be of type Linux. Please make note that there is a variety of different operating systems you could create, and within the Linux category we have many other different versions of Ubuntu or Linux that we could use. So let's make sure we choose Linux and Ubuntu. Let's give it at least 1 gig of virtual RAM. That will increase performance a little bit. We need to make sure we're going to create a virtual hard drive where we will install the operating system. Here we are asked what kind of file extension we want to give to the virtual hard drive. So we're going to use the default, which is the VirtualBox disk image. It's going to be dynamically allocated. This means that even though you could say that your virtual drive is going to be 20 gigs and you're actually only using 8, well, the file that represents the virtual disk would only be 8 gigs. And that gives you some space savings on the physical drive itself. It's asking for a file name for your virtual drive. We leave it as default. And here we go. We have a virtual machine that's going to be ready for our Ubuntu installation. One thing we need to do next is to actually configure the storage devices, in this case the CD-ROM. As you know, to install every operating system, you need to have some sort of media that contains the installation files. In this case, I've downloaded an ISO image of the installation CD for the Ubuntu operating system. It's a big file, it's about 1 gig, and you could use ISO images as media for any virtual machine. And let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So basically right now it's telling me that the virtual CD-ROM is empty. So what we want to do is be able to add that ISO image to the system. Now that we've done that, the machine is actually configured to be able to boot from that CD-ROM. So let's go ahead and give it a try. It's going to appear right here. So let's see how it goes. Now remember that this machine, it's a virtual machine, it's running on my laptop, therefore it's not going to be as responsive as it would be if it was running directly on your physical machine. As a matter of fact, any virtual machine that runs on a standalone installation will be much slower than usual. So let's go ahead and disregard those messages. Most of those are from VirtualBox themselves. And the OS is finally booting up. Now, based on the experience you got from installing Windows, you will notice that Linux itself nowadays hasn't changed that much. There are some subtle differences, like for example in this screen you are actually allowed to run the operating system directly from the CD with no installation required. What that allows you to do is to actually take a look at the operating system before installing it. Sort of like give it a test drive, if you want to call it that. So we are not going to do that. What we want to do is we actually want to install the Ubuntu operating system. So we're going to choose this option. It is going to load all the installer files. It's going to do some minimum checks, like for example the minimum storage required, if in case of being a laptop, if it's plugged in, if you are connected to the internet, all the basic checks for the system to start. Now, since this is a brand new installation and we do not care what we have in a hard drive, we're just going to go ahead and say to erase the disk and install Ubuntu utilizing the entire partition. So go ahead and say install now. Another thing is we are asked to give a time zone, so we're going to choose LA. The keyboard layout, we'll go ahead and choose the default in English, US English. We are asked our name. We're also asked for the computer name. We'll just leave it as default, and a username. We're also asked for a password. Once we have all that information entered, we go ahead to the next step. Now, Ubuntu utilizes something called Ubuntu One, which is a sort of Google Docs, SkyDrive, or iDrive in the other Microsoft Apple world. So I will not go ahead and configure that right now. I am just going to install the operating system. And as you can see, the installation is way in progress. It is going to take a little while for it to complete the installation, and I'll meet you guys back once that is complete. So as you can see, the installation has completed. Now it's asking to restart the machine. We're going to go ahead and do that. Also, we should eject the media. So let's go ahead and remove the disk from the CD-ROM, and let's go back to where we want to go, to our desktop. And it's on a boot up process. And voila, here we have our Ubuntu desktop. So let me see if I can log in. It takes a little while. Remember, it's running from a virtual machine, so it's not as fast. And here we go. This is your Windows desktop. I'm sorry, your Linux desktop. It has been updated. They've changed the whole UI, and we'll talk a little bit about what kinds of desktop managers there are for Linux. So that's one thing that's an advantage over Windows, is that you could have different Windows managers and they all look different, they have different features. That is it for this video on how to install Linux. I will make another one that will give you a small tour on the user interface.